I see the flying car industry as game changing when it comes to not only future warfare, but future military operations. Just as important, humanitarian relief operations support all the things that we do to pass the homeland. Start thinking about these devices, codes, and it fundamentally changes the game. Program with a vision of world impact. By partnering today with stakeholders across industries, we can set up the United States for this aerospace phenomenon. Potential outcomes are rewarding and transformative with both military and commercial applications.
I want to offer my congratulations to Dr. Roper and his team for achieving this revolutionary rapid contracting and prototyping method to bring industry and DoD together to develop this new exciting technology with both
so exciting. This technology has the potential to make vertical flight more affordable and more widely available. And with the encouragement of the U.S. Air Force and the entire federal government, American companies employ American workers to gain head start and win their share of this lucrative market. eVTOLs have distinct agile, vertical takeoff and landing capabilities and cost much less to operate because of their electric motors.
We are becoming a trusted innovation partner in commercial tech. I could not be prouder of this initiative. I could not be prouder of this team. And I am excited to see how quickly we can go to help commercialize this market for our nation so that our warfighters have options they don't have today and our nation has economic advantage. Innovation is battle.
Yeah, Sterling, I think we have most folks in now. If you want to go and stop here, we'll go ahead and get started. Good afternoon, Colonel Nathan Diller here with the Agility Prime team and the Ask Me Anything Wednesday webinar. First of all, I apologize for the link. For some reason today, we had as our standard 1 o'clock populated incorrectly on the Google or the invite that we had. So my apologies first for that. It always takes a little while for everyone to get into the room. So we try to give a little bit of a pause there at the beginning to get folks on board. So anyway, thank you all for joining us. The topic for today is crossing the valley of death. And the discussion for this, this is something that DoD has used to describe the very difficult challenge of taking a technology and moving it from the lab, from the idea phase actually into the field. And this is a non-trivial task, and for a lot of good reasons. Many technologies actually never make it, and that's because we have professionals that design, that do engineering, that do testing, operators that touch it and realize it doesn't meet the mark. But there are other cases where we have these bigger institutional challenges that maybe keep us from getting that capability to the field as quickly as we like. So today we're going to have a discussion from a team be moderated by Dr. Ashish Bagai. We'll have folks from Army and from the Navy as they start to dig into some of these early technologies. Before we get to that though, I want to talk just a little bit more on this concept associated with Agility Prime, this idea of technology absorption, and this concept that arises really from a realization that we have that DoD funding for research and development is becoming a minority and a smaller minority as we're moving forward. in the overall research and development. And that doesn't mean that there's not still amazing things that are happening in the Department of Defense. And we are still continuing to create some phenomenal capabilities. What it does mean is there's so much more out there in the world of technology that may not be 100% initially considered or designed for military use or has a military use case. And so the question that's been posed by Dr. Will Roper, who is our Assistant Secretary for Acquisitions internal to the Air Force, is, are there different ways that we can absorb that technology faster? Are there ways that we can find those technologies that are out there in the commercial space? We can use DoD resources to accelerate that commercial capability in a way that provides advantage to those commercial developers, that provides leverage, additional risk reduction for the investors, and eventually reduces costs to the taxpayer, capability to the warfighter. So this has been an ongoing thesis, a strong effort to make sure that we can create this synthesis between academia, between industry, between investors, between the government, and to continue to show his commitment to this future that he sees. This week he announced a reorganization of AFWERX. AFWERX has been a phenomenal initiative under the Air Force to really get to some of these problems, to help us understand how innovation is done, to help us reach out to the industry more effectively, and to help us think internally to the Air Force about airman innovation and how our airmen not only can help internally, but in some cases can help drive some of that development in the commercial space. So AFWERX has existed now for a few years. And just this week, Dr. Roper has launched an AFWERX 2.0 initiative. And it's important to Agility Prime because under this 2.0 initiative, Agility Prime now is a subset of AFWERX. In addition to that, there is also the AFVentures effort, which, as you know, internal to Agility Prime, we have a variety of these small startups who have taken advantage of this new approach to small business innovation, research, and funding, and has created a way of partnering with industry and investors to really take small businesses with big ideas and put them on a path to become big businesses that can compete globally. It's still very important that some of these are very specific to DoD needs, but there's a subset that we think is important to help nourish the relationship with this growing commercial tech sector. So that is also there. The traditional, I'll say tradition, the original innovative piece of AFWERX continues to be under AFWERX 2.0. And now Agility Prime, as an initial pathfinder for this thesis, is now a third piece under this new AFWERX 2.0. So I continue to be the team lead for Agility Prime. I'm the AFWERX director as we start to put these ideas together. Looking forward to working with this team, both across internal to the Air Force, as well as a growing team across industry and investors, and as well as the interagency and international community. So as we start to make this transition, look forward to feedback on how we as the Air Force can continue to develop and foster these collaborative relationships. And as we move over today, looking to see, internal to Agility Prime, we are focusing more on the test and evaluation part of research, development, test, and evaluation. Today, we have some fantastic speakers that will be talking from the Navy and from the Army perspective of the earlier research phases and how we as Agility Prime can help leverage that research and help that research transition across the Valley of Death. So to lead that discussion today, I have with us here Dr. Ashish Bagai. Dr. Bagai clearly is an expert in VTOL with a distinguished career both in commercial and in government, most recently as a DARPA program manager leading a variety of VTOL efforts, notably the VTOL X plane. He has been a key team helping with Agility Prime now since its inception and has brought together a fantastic panel. Dr. Bagai, thanks so much for the help that you have provided for Agility Prime, and thanks for bringing this panel together today.
Nathan, thanks so much for that. It's been fantastic to work on the program from inception to where we've come today, and the changes that it promises. The the wonderful opportunities. So I very much appreciate that. I'm excited to be hosting 3 very influential S&T organizations today. The Army Aviation and Missile Center, the Office of Naval Research, and the Army Research Laboratory Vehicle Technology Directorate. Our conversations today are going to pull a bit from 2 webinars ago, where Mike Hirschberg of the Vertical Flight Society also discussed or highlighted, among other things, the pressing need to develop the future generation for workforce that this electric flight ecosystem is starting to demand. And tightly coupled to this is also the importance of discussing early research and technologies that are at low readiness levels, along with opportunities to surmount barriers to opportunity, to bridge the gap from inception to fruition, to cross, as you say, the valley of death. Now, the Air Force, in its extraordinary approach, has created, I might say, a unique pull for concepts and technologies that were otherwise singularly interdependent on the establishment of a UAM ecosystem, more mature types of technologies. And in so doing, the Agility Prime program has crafted an opportunity to catalyze the maturation of these core eVTOL aircraft. And it's done so in a symbiotic approach between the DoD and private industry. Another outcome of the motivational success of the Agility Prime effort, I might add, has been to encourage ideas and technologies that are as yet in their nascent stages to emerge in seek of opportunity. And it is with these concepts, or rather with concepts such as these in mind, that we have 3 representative DoD organizations that have been instrumental in conducting and supporting fundamental research motivated by relevance, in developing an esoteric workforce and providing opportunities, both facilities and expertise, for cooperative research and development to, as Dr. Baker, director of the ARL, has put it, operationalize science. So from the Aviation and Missile Center, we have Dr. Mahindra Bhagwat. From the Office of Naval Research, we have Dr. David Gonzalez. And from the Army Research Laboratories, we have Dr. Rajneesh Singh. Today, each of them will be presenting about their organizations, followed by a few minutes of dialogue that I would like to indulge in. And at the end of all 3, we have reserved some time to address questions from the audience. So we appreciate your interest and thank you all for being here. With that, I'd like to go ahead and introduce Dr. Mahindra Bhagwat. Sterling, if you'd like to bring his charts up, or Mahindra, if you have your control on your charts, please feel free to bring them up. Dr. Bhagwat is the aeromechanics. Dr. Bhagwat is the aeromechanics and basic research lead for aviation technology at the U.S. Army Combat Capabilities Development Command, Aviation and Missile Center Technology Development Directorate. In this role, he is responsible for planning, technical management, and execution oversight of their in-house basic research programs and the extramural multi-university vertical lift center of excellence program. He is a subject matter expert in aerodynamics and earned his doctorate from the University of Maryland. Mahindra will provide an overview of the AVMC's role in developing the workforce through its educational research efforts. And with that, Mahindra, I hand off to you.
Thank you, Ashish. I hope you can see my charts from my computer.
Yes.
Okay. Zoom is at a low TRL level on government ITs, so we might have some hiccups on the So thank you for the introduction. My name is Mahindra Bhagwat. I'm a aeromechanics and basic research portfolio lead for US Army CCDC AVMC. And my presentation is related to all these acronyms: CCDC, AVMC, the Army Futures Command, and how my basic research portfolio fits within all of these. As you know, the Army Futures Command is the Army's newest command. It was stood up only 2 years ago, although it seems like a long time back. And last July, yes.
Not to interrupt you, but your audio is a little bit scratchy. Could you call in on a cell phone as well alongside your laptop?
Okay. Is there a number? Actually,
Okay, give us a couple of seconds while we just resolve this. I think Mahindra's going to try to call in on his phone.
I will answer just for a moment while we're brief technical break here. There's a question that came across unrelated to Army Modernization Enterprise, which I will not be able to speak intelligently to at all. Won't make any attempts there, but I will take just a minute while we're getting our comms back up. A question that was addressed regarding some of the AFWERX, the direct to phase 2 under the Air Force Ventures. As all of you know, as soon as COVID hit, the Air Force did a significant pivot to support efforts related to helping with the COVID-19 piece. As a result, that, as in many cases, that created some turbulence in many of the things that were ongoing. We are working through that turbulence, you know, as everyone else across the country and across the world. We are slowly hoping to get on a path to recovery. There was a fantastic effort by the team that did that rapid contracting for those things. We do expect to have many of the awards coming out soon. There will be some adjustments on some future timelines, and we plan on getting that back out to the team at the earliest. So feel free to ask further questions on that. We will have a separate session later on giving more details on that, as well as some earlier potential opportunities. And with regard to the 2.0B STTR, expect us to have that next week as well. The information on how we'll proceed there and some direct ideas on that STTR, but definitely looking forward to that opportunity. A couple of other questions we need to get answered internally to see if we can still make that happen. And I'll be happy. It looks like we have comms back up.
yes, we do.
Okay, super. Sorry for that interruption there. Hopefully that answers a few of the questions regarding the SBIRs, and happy to continue to answer those questions moving forward. Back over to the team here.
Perfect, thank you. So is this audio a little bit better? I'm now calling on my cell phone.
Very much so. Thank you.
Absolutely, okay. So to pick up, AFC, or Army Futures Command, was stood up in 2018, just about 2 years back, and last year it reached full operational capability. And they have really hit the ground running with the goal to drive innovation. And when I say drive innovation, it really connects back to today's topic, that not just innovate and come up with new technologies, but really to help these technologies cross the so-called valley of death, because that's really more important than just coming up with innovative ideas. It is to make sure that they make the whole journey and get it to the end user. In case of the Army or the military, it's always the warfighter, but in general, it's getting to the end user, whether it's civilian or military. That is really the goal of innovation. And AFC is doing that by bringing together 3 key functions which were previously dispersed across the entire Army, across different commands. These are the futures and concepts. The futures and concept centers assesses user needs, works with the requirement community, assesses needs, and then capability gaps. The combat development piece in the middle, that does the science and technology, S&T work, and comes up with solutions to address these gaps. And then the third piece, which is the combat systems center, combat systems command, helps transition these technologies that come out of the S&T world to acquisition, production, and eventually to sustainment. So together, these 3 pillars really help any innovative idea cross this so-called valley of death. So the futures and concepts part not only assesses needs, but identifies opportunities where we need work in the lower TRL areas, we need more fundamental work. In the middle, in the S&T organization, we then work on these technologies, develop them through basic research, applied research, and all the way to advanced demonstrations. And then the combat systems piece takes that, refines it through iteration, experimentation, and then gets those technologies ready for acquisition and then eventually production and sustainment. So AFC partners with ASALT, the Assistant Secretary of the Army for Acquisition, Logistics, and Technology. So ASALT is the Army's acquisition executive. And so that's the milestone decision authority for all our acquisition programs. The PEOs are and the project manager officers are all under ASALT. So AFC partners with ASALT for acquisition. And then once a system is procured and in service, the sustainment is still with Army Material Command. Until 2 years ago, our S&T organizations were part of the Army Material Command, but now we are together with these other two pillars within AFC to make sure that the technologies we work on are both relevant to the users and then at the end are ready to transition to acquisition. AFC also stood up cross-functional teams or CFTs. And these are really the drivers that make sure that these three pillars within AFC work together with each other very well. And they are sort of the quarterbacks to make sure that the ideas you start with, the S&T you develop, and then the experimentation and iteration on these technologies makes it ready for transition. Initially, there were 6 CFTs, and now I think there are 8. They also have project quarterback, which makes sure that all these CFTs really work together with each other. So long-range precision fires is ready at the same time when the ground systems, NGCV, is ready. Same when future vertical lift is ready. So we need to make sure that not all the technologies are developed, but they're also developed at the right time. So CCDC, or Combat Capabilities Development Command, is the Army's S&T command. So the vision of the CCDC is to be the S&T foundation for the Army modernization enterprise. So both AVMC, the Aviation Missile Center, Army Research Lab, as well as other centers like Ground Vehicle System Center, the Soldier Center, all of these armament center are part of CCDC. This is where all of majority of Army's S&T work, that is 6.1 basic research, 6.2 applied research, and then advanced tech demonstration, 6.3 is done. And so the mission of CCDC is both to develop the technologies and also to provide the expertise to deliver these capabilities to the appropriate acquisition and sustainment pieces. Going to the next slide. So the AVMC is really a subset of that. The vision is essentially to be the S&T foundation for all things aviation and missile. I would like to highlight a couple of things that, our mission statement says that we deliver collaborative capabilities for aviation and missile. So the emphasis on collaboration. Like all government organizations, we have limited resources, time, money, personnel. And when we collaborate, we actually get, essentially, it acts as a force multiplier, that all of us get more than what all of us collectively put in through these collaborative efforts. I also want to highlight that although we are an S&T organization, we provide expertise for the entire life cycle engineering of each technology. So we also develop the expertise in S&T and then provide these expertise to the sustainment community, to the acquisition committee, to the project managers and PEO of the organization to help with their problems. Next slide is just a quick overview of what AVMC looks like. I want to say that we are a very distributed organization located in 4 different areas. My own directorate, the Technology Development Directorate, has the headquarters in Huntsville. We also have contingents in JBL in Virginia. We are located at NASA Langley in Virginia, and I'm located at NASA Ames in Moffett Field, California. Being co-located with NASA has the advantage that we naturally tend to collaborate both with people, expertise, as well as facilities. So that aids facility. Being geographically distributed, I think we are done a little bit better in this COVID-19 challenge because we are already used to working across geographic boundaries. But I think one thing the strange situation that we find ourselves in has taught us is that we need to be better prepared for working virtually. Next slide shows priorities. I would like to point out that with all the focus on reform and modernization, readiness for the current force remains a high priority. And the number one priority is people. And this ties back to what you mentioned earlier, that Mike Hirschberg from the VFS brought up that workforce is a challenge for everybody across the entire industry. And when I say industry, I mean the industry base, industry, government, academia. We need to make sure that our people are prepared for our future needs. So that remains the highest priority for AVMC. Here's a quick look at the 6 S&T priorities. Those are aligned with the Army modernization strategies. And we also have the 6 of the 8 CFTs corresponding to the modernization strategies. AVMC is lead for 3 of those 6 CFTs, the long-range precision fires on the missile side, air and missile defense also. On the aviation side, we are mostly aligned with the future vertical lift, naturally. The FVL CFT has 4 lines of efforts, or LOEs. One is FARA, Future Attack and Recon Aircraft. You all must be aware that we currently have a competitive prototype effort underway for that. FLARA is the larger aircraft, CapeSat-3, the future long-range assault aircraft. The program of record for that is also underway. We worked over the last 5 or 6 years, we worked on the JMR, Joint Multi-Role Technology Demonstration Program, which really looked at technologies and made sure that they are mature to go into the FLARA program of record. The other 2 are modular open system architectures and then the future UAS systems. At this point, the government is not engaged in a lot of S&T work in the UAS area, but we are really relying on the industry and all the innovation happening in the industry right now to provide the platform solution. The S&T is still focused on other supporting areas such as autonomy, controls, and so on, which will go into the possibly help the next upgrades of these programs. So the next slide shows the aviation side of my directorate, the Technology Development Directorate, and it's divided into several focus areas. You can think of the 2 big focus areas, platforms and mission systems. Is when you look at the aircraft, platforms is essentially what you see, and mission system is all that you don't see, is that's underneath the skin. And as many of you know, that mission system is actually sometimes the bigger part of the aircraft in terms of the capabilities that it brings. We do a lot of in-house S&T, 6.2 work, applied research, as well as basic research. Most basic research is more focused in rotorcraft unique aeromechanics area, and I'll talk a little bit detail about that. That's the part of my part of portfolio. But we also do a lot of in-house applied research work in the areas of flight dynamics and controls, rotors, a bigger vehicle management and control area. Also in autonomy and then human systems interface area, we do a lot of in-house work. We do a lot of 6.3 or advanced tech demo type of work where we collaborate with industry. Most of that work is actually executed by the industry with the government. So 6.3 is often a really, really collaborative program where industry leads and government kind of works with them on that. I mentioned some of the major program areas that we work on. The JMR-TD is something that we just finished last year, and then those technologies proof in that program will feed into the FLARA program of record. And it's not just the technologies feeding into it, it also helps you clearly define the requirements for your program of record. So the current technology, what is feasible with current technology, making sure it's realistic and it's not leading to conflicting requirements. So it's important that through these tech demonstrations and even with competitive prototype, we help the programs of record and acquisition by ensuring that we don't have unrealistic requirements, we don't have conflicting requirements, and the technology is indeed ready or will be ready when required to meet the needs of the program of record. So one thing I want to say is that the basic research is very much a part of this, this bigger aviation portfolio. I put up this definition of basic research. I think that's not an Army, I think it's a OSD definition, that it's really a systematic study directed towards greater knowledge without specific application towards processes or products in mind. And that can be a little bit misleading. It doesn't mean that it is really useless and you don't know what you're going to do with it. It is really that it is not just for the specific application that you're looking at. You always have a specific or multiple applications in mind. Remember, we said for a technology to be successful, you start with all three pieces. First, make sure that the technology you're working on, even at the basic research level, is relevant to the user needs. There is an opportunity in terms of capability gap where this technology can help fill that gap. So in that sense, you always have something in mind. But what is different is in basic research, we are asking more fundamental questions. Nathan mentioned earlier that really the industry, innovators, what they want to do is they just want to fly. You just want to get it done. It doesn't matter if you really understand the underlying theory, the underlying principle. So that's really where the basic research focuses on. It's asking these questions that some technology that enables this, how does it enable it? What are the underlying phenomena? What is the physics behind it? How do we measure or quantify that physics? And then how do we model it so that we can come up with a theory that describes it? And all of this is useful because it's not really one application that defines the success of a technology. In the last 3 months with this COVID-19 situation, one thing I always hear in the news is with every drug, there is a off-label use, and it's approved by FDA for off-label use. That's really the strength of the early TRL research, that it really understands a technology, what drives it, so that you can explore off-label use. That what you didn't originally intended it for, but what else can it use for? Where else can it push, expand your design space, expand the boundaries of what is possible and what is achievable. I'm going to quickly give an overview of this basic research portfolio area. We have 3 programs. One is the university research program. I'll talk about that last. ILIR is an in-house laboratory independent research program. So that's really our pathway for new graduates from the university program into Army research. It helps them come up with proposals for their ideas, make sure that the ideas are scientifically relevant, but also relevant to the Army mission. And then the third line, which is focuses on rotary wing unique or vertical lift unique physics and phenomena. And that really bridges this basic research with the in-house applied research, and then eventually to the 6.3 tech demonstrations. As I mentioned earlier, all of these efforts are highly collaborative. Our university research program is not only collaborative, but it's also co-funded by Navy and NASA, and I'm sure David will mention some of that in his talk after this. we always leverage areas of joint interest with NASA, Navy, as well as with ARL. The Vehicle Technology Directorate within ARL also does similar 6162 mixture in the rotor aeromechanics area, and we collaborate very closely with them, again, to essentially act as a force multiplier in terms of both putting together not just our funding, but with our expertise, facilities, and then combining the knowledge together. We also work closely with industry through SBIR and STTR programs, as well as through our 6.2 and 6.3 programs. So the next slide is, I'm going to quickly talk about ILIR program. I mentioned that in basic research, really what you need to do is understand the basic phenomena and underlying physics, have a way to measure, diagnose, quantify it, and then come up with algorithms and models so that you can better understand the physics and then expand it beyond the boundaries of what you measured and what we used it for. Why should we work in these areas when everybody else is also looking at? Because Army sometimes has a unique perspective in each of these technology areas, and that comes from having the same workforce work on applied research and tech demo projects and other S&D areas, so that it helps these technologies transition not just from 6162 to 6.3, but all the way into an acquisition program. We really use our connections to industry and academia and university collaborations to make sure that the university work also remains relevant to the government interest, and then that in turn, in the end, helps transition that research. This is a chart that was almost 2 years old. The reason I picked it today is not only it describes our ILIR program, but it has the keyword eVTOL. And like I mentioned, our interest in eVTOL is not just for the sake of flying, but understanding all the underlying technologies and their implications on the design space. We may be able to use the same technologies for better control, better agility, maneuverability, even for affordability considerations. The technologies that come from eVTOL may grow into all of these areas. Next slide is our second in-house basic research program. I'm not going to talk a lot about that. I'll just give a few examples of interactional aerodynamics phenomena that we work on, and that is something with these emerging eVTOL or even non-eVTOL configuration that have multiple rotors, multiple lifting, propulsing surfaces. The interactional aerodynamics and aeromechanics in general is a lot more important than in the case of conventional helicopters. Even for the tandem helicopter, it's just 2 rotors. Now you have multiple aerodynamic surfaces and propulsors that can have different interactions with each other, and understanding them can help you not just avoid problems, but actually use them as way to control and expand, say, the flight envelope or the performance envelope or affordability of these configurations. Next, I'm going to talk briefly about the VL-ARCO program. This is our extramural research program with the universities, and this is a little bit different from ARO grants or ONR grants with the universities, where the focus is on the technology being developed. With the VL-ARCO program, the focus has always been on, it's been a dual focus on graduate research and graduate education. And that really helps train the next generation of workforce. The program started, I think, in the late or early 80s. And at that time, it was recommended in actually 2 areas. One was the vertical lift area, and then the other was automotive area, is to ensure that we have sufficiently trained workforce for the future of these technologies. We should have university centers that not just focus on technology research, but also focus on workforce development with a mixture of graduate education and research in areas relevant to vertical lift. My final slide gives an overview of the current VLR-CO program. We have 3 university centers, and centers are, like I said, the center has a core mass of expertise with faculty and researcher on various technologies relevant to rotorcraft. So as you know, vertical lift is a very multidisciplinary area, and it's good to have workforce trained not just in one, not just in aerodynamics or not just in structures, but in all of these areas, because all of those are inherently and naturally intertwined with each other. And you cannot be working only on aerodynamics and ignoring the others. So that's the motivation for having these centers where you have the critical mass of expertise to train the next generation workforce. The 3 centers, they may not have all the expertise themselves, and they partner with other universities to bring in expertise from outside. What that also helps is gets the reach of vertical lift to these other universities. The other universities also have the center resources in education and in terms of faculty expertise available to them. These centers are run as cooperative agreements. So this has strong potential for government and industry collaborative participation. Even industry, although industry does not fund or is not formally involved with these centers, they actually very actively collaborate on research projects and are interested not in just the product of the research, but also the product of the center, which is the student or the future workforce. In typical Army presentation, I often list that as a risk, that currently what the industry has been doing is a lot more attractive than what the Army is doing. And we end up losing these students to the industry instead of them coming and joining the Army. And I only say that jokingly. The purpose of this this program is to train the next generation of the workforce for the entire industry base, not just for the Army, not just for the government, but for the entire vertical lift industry base. But it's just a testament to show that today what the industry is doing is very encouraging and very enticing to the students. And we are seeing a phenomenal growth in not just aviation, but in particular VTOL, vertical lift industry. And it's important that we also grow this sort of workforce training program so that we are ready to train the next generation of workforce for the entire industry. So with that, I will stop and I would let Ashish take over.
Mahindra, thank you so much. That was really very informative. I think it is really helpful to have put a perspective on the research universities and the development of the workforce. I know that the VLR-CO and prior to this, known as the Rotorcraft Centers of Excellence, have been paramount in developing the current workforce, the expertise that we have in country. That's really shaping the future of aviation, especially vertical flight. There are very few organizations that do that with such focus, and or universities that have programs with such focus and pointed objectives. We're a little bit tight on time here, so although I do have a few questions for you, so I'm going to perhaps preserve those for a little bit later. But I did see one that I think popped up from the audience, and I just want to run that by you, Mahindra, really quickly. And the question was, which center of excellence has a strong focus in propulsion systems? Is that something that you can provide some quick guidance to either now or a little bit later, if not right away?
So I would say the Penn State currently has the larger focus on propulsion technologies.
Okay. And these are focused on, I mean, propulsion for rotorcraft, of course, is specifically pretty broad, yes, right? In the sense of the rotor provides propulsion as well as lift. But when you talk about propulsion, are we talking about internal combustion, hydrocarbon fuel burning? Are we talking about propulsion systems, distributed propulsion?
So when we say propulsion technology, we are talking about both engine, and University of Maryland has a task looking at hybrid electric propulsion, not purely electric, but hybrid electric. But we also look at, gears and transmission and the entire drivetrain. So that whole chain from producing, energy to driving, propelling, is what I mean by the propulsion technology. So engines, drivetrains, gearboxes, loss of lube in some of these is a big challenge, and it still continues to be, a topic of research.
Fabulous. Thank you so much for that.
And I'll be happy to, talk to the audience afterwards and connect afterwards and connect them to the appropriate people at the centers.
I think that'd be hugely valuable. Thanks. With that, I'd like to transition to our next speaker. And while I'm introducing him, if you don't mind bringing his charts up. This is Dr. David Gonzalez. He is a program officer for aerodynamics within the Sea-Based Aviation National Naval Responsibility Portfolio that is managed by the Aviation Force Protection and Integrated Defense Department, Code 35, at the Office of Naval Research. David holds a PhD in aerospace engineering from the Ohio State University with a focus on high fidelity computational fluid dynamics. His portfolio includes a variety of basic and applied discovery and invention and small business innovative technology transfer research programs. These are executed with the DoD, domestic and international academic institutions, as well as with industry, with the intent of developing novel next generation capabilities for future air vehicle platforms and systems. David will start with a presentation overview within the context of highlighting interests in eVTOL technologies and applications. On to you, David. You will need to unmute, I think. David, I think your audio
Can you hear me?
Now we can, thank you.
Can you hear me properly?
Yes. Oh, David, I think we've lost your audio again.
Can you hear me?
Yes, you're coming in clear right now.
Okay. Hopefully this works this time around, but thank you again for the opportunity to present to you tonight, give you a quick overview at what we do, at least what I do in Code 35. And for those of you that may not be familiar, Code 35 is the Aviation Force Projection and Integrated Defense Department within ONR. And we actually cover a whole host of different basic and applied research topic areas. So if you switch to the next slide, you'll see that the broad range, I belong to the Code 351, which is the Aerospace Science Research Division. And we have a whole host of focus areas that are rather complementary and all towards enabling both air platforms, kinetic weapons, and directed energy weapons, all within this one department. And as you can see here, it's a broad portfolio of different areas. Again, flight dynamics and control aerodynamics. These are two very synergistic portfolios that run concurrently, and I'll show you a little bit here what that looks like. But we do everything from science of autonomy to directed energy weapons to very high-speed hypersonics, aerothermodynamics, jet noise, propulsion and power, and of course aerospace structures are a big tenet of what we do within ONR. If you switch to the next slide, really what's the rather unique aspect of ONR, at least we have been established as a national naval responsibility. And what does that really mean? What bottom line is, at least for this community, what I'd like to convey with this is that really what we are searching for as ONR is really to target the very naval-centric technologies enabling the capabilities that we need to operate in the challenging environments that we operate from. And those are the maritime environments as you see here. So there's a lot of work being done, research and development work being done at the various services that cover broad topics within the aerodynamics and aerospace field. And we absolutely look to leverage all of that science as much as possible, such that we can essentially focus our limited resources, like Mahindra was saying earlier, within topics that are really key to what we do, and not really taking a look at from any other services perspective. So I'll show you in a couple of slides that really are, the picture that you see here kind of encompasses the bulk of the capabilities that at least I am responsible for and in the lookout for technologies and enabling technologies. So as part of this national naval responsibility, and kind of in conjunction with the VLR code that Mahindra mentioned earlier, really a big tenet of what we're trying to do is develop the technology, of course, but also be able to have a consistent pool of scientists and engineers in the pipeline to continue developing the capabilities that we need and maintain the health of our scientific endeavors within the Navy. Next slide, please. And what you see here, again, there are several national naval responsibilities within ONR. The one that I'm specifically referring to and called out here is the so-called sea-based aviation. And that's a program that was stood several years ago. It actually encompasses these three key pillars that you're seeing here on these charts. And first and foremost is the aircraft pillar. This is actually comprised of two different portfolios, which is why I mentioned earlier, it's very synergistic between the aerodynamics, which is the portfolio that I run, and also the flight dynamics and control. These two portfolios essentially make up this aircraft pillar that you see on the left-hand side. And then, of course, you have all the structural work, all the research enabling the material developments and applications for surviving the maritime environment, as well as the propulsion systems to power all of our vehicles going forward. Next slide. And again, as I mentioned earlier, really it's our role within ONR, within the sea-based aviation national naval responsibility, is just enabling those very unique capabilities that the Navy really requires going forward, so that we can actually pursue our interests and defend our nation going forward. And next slide. So here I want to touch a little bit on what really my portfolio is. And I only have a couple of examples because I wanted to keep everything relatively short and succinct, such that we can engage in some more detailed conversations. But bottom line is, again, aerodynamics encompasses quite a broad range of capabilities, essentially. And within the Navy, we operate both fixed wing and rotary wing vehicles, both of which are actually considered as part of the aerodynamics portfolio. We have work and research going in these two different applications. So it failed to point out the fixed wing application there, but that is definitely part of what we do within ONR. Next slide. And here, what really we're trying to convey, again, it's kind of to drive home some of the pictures that we've shown previously in this slide deck, is like even though they're, again, aerodynamic control, aerodynamic performance, all of these types of aspects in science and research associated with these focus areas, even though they may be very ubiquitous to the entire services, air vehicles in general, there are very unique aspects of operating these systems that make it very, very challenging to actually execute our potential mission. And what you see here in the middle, the so-called aerodynamic interface, is a very, very tough problem that it's been researched extensively, but there's still so much that we do not understand. And within the context of something like a distributed propulsion system, i.e., if you go, especially if you go down to the smaller scale systems, now you're talking about interactions that are really, really complex, and you may have to explore them very, very much in detail to be able to kind of develop the capabilities and the mitigation strategies to operate such vehicles within these constructs. So again, we have the moving ships, we have the aircraft coming into land. If you're a rotor craft, you're essentially your relative speeds compared, or your speed relative to the ships themselves can be relatively small. And again, if you're in this very unsteady, turbulent environment, it becomes very, very challenging to actually execute these operations. More so when you have very rough seas, but you have to land on these ships. So that's an ongoing challenge that we continually seek innovative ideas in order to tackle those. How can we operate within this environment in a much more safe and efficient manner going forward? What technologies can enable such capabilities? Next slide. And this is kind of what again, retouching on the subject, since it is such a huge problem and challenge for us within the Navy. The aerodynamic interface and coupling is a very challenging problem. So all this atmospheric turbulence generated and interacting with the ship itself, and how does that translate to what the pilots see and experience in their aircraft, and how can they respond to these aspects? So a lot of high fidelity modeling and simulation required to try to characterize this. But the problem also becomes that actually developing at a basic and applied research level, it becomes very, very challenging to start developing these very simplistic models or representations of what this environment could be in order to develop those strategies to enable the safe operation of these vehicles. That's a tough problem in and of itself. So how can you distill all of the fundamental physics and principles associated with all of these interactions into a very relevant problem that you can essentially have and execute in a controlled environment, but still be able to extract meaningful physics out of? That's a very big challenge for us, and we're continually seeking, again, innovative ideas with regards to this. Next slide. Kind of going in line with the aerodynamic interface, because of the various vehicles that we operate, both vertical and short takeoff and landing, those are also very complicated environments that we have to take into account. And again, trying to land in these ships, it's a very unsteady environment. So there's a lot of interaction and coupling between what this focus area on VSTOL is exploiting and exploring relative to the aerodynamic interface problem in and of itself. But a lot of focus, and another thing that I kind of wanted to point out of this is that, yes, ONR is most definitely a stakeholder in the vertical lift center of excellence, a research center of excellence that Mahindra mentioned previously, led by the Army. And we are definitely very much committed to exercising and supporting, fostering the development of our future SMT workforce through that program, and continually seek a very meaningful research that could be enacted and transitioned over to the services in the future. And last but not least, the next slide. As it may be evident, there's always a need to develop schemes to best leverage all of the novel technologies that are actually being developed out there. A key area, and then again, the Air Force has been conducting a lot of research in flow control. So has ONR previously as well, as you can see in this example. Any technology that we can actually enable to provide increased performance, if we can even do that within the same capabilities or within the same aircraft that we have, which is a tough challenge. Just who knows if it's actually achievable, but nevertheless, flow control capabilities or technologies are actually showing quite a lot of promise, not just necessarily for potential fixed-wing platforms and large vehicles like you're seeing here, but they could also be very effective when we start considering some of these smaller eVTOL type constructs or platforms that we may, that the Agility Prime or something similar to that could be developing in the future. So there's a lot of applicability here with regards to expanding your operational scope with these types of technologies moving forward. And I did want to mention, and this may be just at least there are multiple ideas or multiple efforts that we're actually executing right now across these focus areas that are of interest within this aerodynamics portfolio, both at academia and at private industries, or especially small businesses themselves. That is by far one of the areas that we're looking to foster as much collaboration as possible. Again, I've used the word innovation several times already, and for a very specific purpose. That's a key tenet of the Agility Prime effort in and of itself. But I don't want it to go overuse that word. But that's really what we're going for here. How can we actually foster these small businesses to enable them and actually increase their capabilities and actually make them part of the supply chain later on in the future, and continue maturing and supporting the industrial base of the United States in general. That's a big part of what we're trying to tackle as well within the Office of Naval Research moving forward. So with that, I believe that I am done. That's pretty much my last slide. So I will transfer it back to you, Dr. Bagai.
David, thank you so much. That was, I think, very informative. I do know that we're starting to see some questions from the audience. And again, in the interest of time, there may be more than I can afford to answer or pose to you right away. I do want to poke at you about one thing, though, and it's a little bit pointed because this is in association or affiliated to the Agility Prime initiatives that we're after, right? So with the emergence of eVTOL technologies, what opportunities do you see for these to complement naval air portfolios? And then associated with that is, what types of new mission spaces or applications would they enable? And what types of unique technological challenges do you believe will need to be addressed to successfully integrate these systems? So it's actually 3 questions posed as one, but tightly coupled.
Okay, my connection there was a bit choppy, but I think I got most of that question. So I'll attempt to answer it. Hopefully, steer me in the right direction if I don't answer it, Ashish. But I believe the question was what sorts of capabilities could be enabled within or eVTOL type technologies potentially be of interest, or within what context we could utilize such capabilities within the Navy. There are several scenarios that at least I can think of that we're exploring whether how to attack these or approach these, I should say. And one of if the community has taken a look and kept, for example, the Marine Corps' force design of the future, or the directions that the commandant of the U.S. Marine Corps is hoping to take. One of the applications, or one of the scenarios is this expeditionary advanced base operations. So deploying smaller units of Marines to secure several very key areas. And there would be significant challenges to actually enabling that capability. And potentially eVTOL, these distributed propulsion technologies could very much provide very meaningful approaches towards enabling some amount of logistics between key areas, between the ship to shore, ship to ship type applications would be very much capabilities that would be very powerful, I guess, to operate. Another potential aspect of this technology, which may make it very attractive, is that if the platform is small enough, and depending on what it is that you want to do with these, you could actually enable ships that are not currently aircraft worthy or aircraft aviation capable. And you could essentially still use those types of platforms to enable some amount of capability brought about by these eVTOL distributed propulsion systems. So those are just a couple of examples of potential applications that could be utilized, or at least that come to mind?
Those were very astute points, David. Thank you. In the interest of time, I am going to move on to the Army Research Labs, but time permitting, we would like to circle back to you.
Sounds great. Thank you very much.
Thank you, David. If we can move on to our final presentation today. Our final speaker is Dr. Rajneesh Singh. He leads a team of researchers focused on vertical lift platform sciences in the Vehicle Technology Directorate of the Army Research Labs, which is located at Aberdeen Proving Grounds in Maryland. In this capacity, Rajneesh is also actively involved in exploring and developing collaborative programs with external organizations that align with the ARL's mission goals. Dr. Singh obtained his doctorate from the Rotorcraft Center at the University of Maryland with a specialization in computational aeroacoustics. He is also a member of the NATO Air Vehicle Technology Panel. The ARL, VTD, is an organization that offers unique opportunities for collaborative technology research and also offers recourse to a large pool of experts. Dr. Singh will discuss the importance of the VTD and the opportunities that it can provide. Rajneesh, thank you. The stage is yours. Okay, I am not being able to hear you, Rajneesh. So if you can check your audio, please.
Rajneesh, you were crystal clear earlier. We might have you call in on the phone for a minute and maybe take.
Is that?
There you go.
Yes, you're back online. Fantastic.
Better now?
Yes.
Okay, all right. So thank you, Ashish. And my screen is clear as well, I assume?
Yes, it is.
Okay. So yeah, so these are, I think, great times for the VTOL community right now. And with programs like Agility Prime, I think things are getting even better. So I'm, with a lot of excitement and enthusiasm, I want to talk about how ARM can contribute in achieving the goals of Agility Prime, as well as meeting our own mission goals. And as we sort of bridge this valley of death, or I guess for our case, we just fly over this valley of death. So let's start. So the next slide is where is the next? How do I share it? Okay. I want to move to the next slide. It's
Rajneesh, maybe try stopping the share and starting again.
yeah. I'm sorry. Okay.
Yeah, we see you now.
All right.
Very good.
So, so I'm from Army Research Lab. ARL is Army's corporate research lab of about 3,000 employees, focusing on foundational research for Army's modernization, as well as for future capabilities into these different technical areas as shown here. Now, as Mahindra spoke earlier, Army has recently undergone a major reorganization. And as part of that, ARL's role can be grouped into these three categories: developing knowledge products, creating, doing foundational research, and being Army's face to universities. So in the context of eVTOL, it's about doing research on enabling new kind of platforms or new operations, or interfacing with different army organizations as we develop requirements or use cases for these vertical lift US that would come into play fairly soon. And also through our outreach, we have almost a global network of interacting with different universities, industry, and other organizations through ARL's Open Campus initiative. So underlying these three roles is this notion of operationalizing science. And idea here is that we do science not for sake of doing science, but rather to make an impact through, it could be through research, through some modeling or tools, or some analysis, and so on. And industry is, I think we need to interact with industry as a means to achieve these goals. And let me explain that through this slide. So here, this slide is showing a spectrum of sort of technology readiness level on the x-axis. And there are different Army programs in this space. So I guess one could see that urban air mobility UAM is in the areas of TRL 4 to 5, and that's the prime spot where Agility Prime is playing. And for ARL, with our focus on future concepts, we are more in TRL 1 to 4. But I want to claim here that there's a strong synergy between the two. And from ARL point of view, as we develop these future concepts, we need to know where the technologies stand, where the trends are going. So we need to be interacting to keep awareness of that. And that's what we hope to seek out by our engagement with UAM or Agility Prime players. And for Agility Prime, I think it's we have a lot of expertise and capabilities that could help them in achieving the goals of accelerating the technology. So this quote on the bottom left from Dr. Baker is very timely here. So the VTOL area in general has been dominated by few OEMs until now. But over the last few years, there's influx of huge number of creative and resourceful entities. And it's really a duty to exploit that creativity, that knowledge, and that enthusiasm to change the future for the Army as well as for the nation. And so really our engagement is motivated by this. Yep.
Rajneesh, can you just hit Control L to maximize your charts, please?
Okay. All right.
Thanks.
So to achieve this interaction with external organizations and industry partners, so we have this initiative called Open Campus Initiative. And the notion here is that over the years, ARL or Army General, they have developed very unique capabilities and expertise, and they were closed to outside world until now. So we wanted to open this up to encourage, to establish collaborations focused on Army-specific challenges for effectively win-win collaborations. So Open Campus does not seek to offer funds, but as you see the list here of the potential benefits, some of these benefits, I think it's really very hard to put numbers on these benefits. So there is, I think, a lot of value that can be extracted both for Agility Prime partners as well as for us through by making use of this initiative. So just to so there are various mechanisms where we can develop collaborations with industry, and one of them is called CRADA. It stands for Cooperative Research and Development Agreement. It's basically an agreement where two sides come together to work on a common problem of interest. So there
Rajneesh.
Yeah.
Rajneesh, your charts have got chopped on the right-hand side. Try Control L, or else just go back to the other view, please.
Yeah, so let me maybe drag the window a little bit. Slightly better.
Oh.
So there are three key features of CRADA. Before we can create some agreement, there has to be a mission alignment, that the problem we are working on has Army relevance, scientific value, and so on. There has to be equitable resource allocation from both sides. Now, resources could be in form of facilities, infrastructure, personnel, or services. And obviously, there has to be availability of resources on the ARL side in terms of SMEs who could be the potential partner. And I should emphasize again that the goal of CRADA is not to provide funding source or to acquire or procure some products. And as the stats on the right shows, we have had quite a few CRADAs in existence, and quite a lot of them are in work right now. So to give an example of how this CRADA what all it can do is, here is an example of the collaboration that I'm leading with Uber company. And the goal here is to jointly collaborate on a dual use technology. So we are looking at this innovative stacked coaxial rotor, which has both applications both for civilian as well as for military products. So in this particular partnership, basically ARL is responsible for doing supercomputer simulations, whereas Uber took responsibility for acquiring experimental data. And for that, they developed agreement with the University of Texas at Austin, and where they set up this test rig and acquired the data. And so this is really a great example of how government, industry, and academia partnership came together and effectively created this win-win-win partnership. And so Uber is getting good quality technical product with half the investment. We are similarly in similar shape. And UT Austin is not only developing some capability which they could use for a long time, as well as training the workforce, which is fairly critical, as vertical flight society has been emphasizing over the years, and same as we have been pushing for as well. So, and this is also a good example of how industry can contribute or can basically fund these basic research efforts, and that have pay off to a wider community. So hats off to both leadership at Uber as well as on Army side to make it happen. And we did make it happen very quickly. So the first meeting with Mark Moore actually happened at BFS Forum in January 2018. And within about 3-4 months, we had this agreement signed off. And it does require some legal review. So you can appreciate that 4 months is not really a long time. And so after that, we had, or I guess our kickoff quite appropriately at his football stadium in Texas, Austin. And as you can see in the pictures, in addition to Mark Moore and Rob, we had Dr. Lewis, I think, who is in audience today, and also our VTT director, Dr. Jared Riddick. So in general, we have had, Dr. Riddick has been very supportive of rather pushing us to explore, to identify and establish these kind of collaborations, which have payoffs to both sides. And this partnership has gained quite a bit of media coverage as well, as shown here. And there have been quite a few technical achievements as well. There are some other examples of this kind of collaborations. We had collaboration with Bell, and in interest of time, I'll just skip on that. So in next few slides, I'm going to talk about very quickly on what areas where these collaborations can be explored. So here is basically an overview slide of Vehicle Technology Directorate, the directorate I'm part of under Dr. Riddick. So we are basically in these 4 areas. So there is this platform aeromechanics, focusing on the vehicle platform technologies on all aspects like design, aeromechanics, and so on. And there is this robotics and autonomy group, which are focusing on autonomy, including the new facility that's coming along is this place for test space for autonomy experimentations. Then there is mechanics. And one of the unique facility they have is this 6 degree of freedom shaker that could be used to qualify airworthiness or of the components that could go onto these eVTOL platforms. And then finally, we have a big effort in propulsion and power area. And I think one capability of interest in this space could be a high altitude engine testing facility. Something that could be again used to qualify engines or under certain operations, certain conditions. Now there are a lot more facilities like this. So I'm just very quick, just talk about one here. There's a wind tunnel we have at the Aberdeen Proving Ground. It's about 3 feet by 3 feet cross section, and that could be leveraged for some basic applied research work. Then we have this virtual flight simulator that could potentially be used for some of the tasks. There is some hybrid electric clustering coming along, and there are a lot more as you see here. In the area of more related to the vehicle design, so we have expertise through us as well as through Mahindra's organization in state-of-art modeling and simulation tool. The two I list here are the Hydra, which is a design tool for these sort of non-traditional platforms. And then there is this major product coming out of AFWERX on Helios, which for high fidelity computational aeromechanics. In addition to that, on the right is basically ARL is host of one of the supercomputing center of DoD, and we have access to unlimited, almost not, I guess unlimited is not the right word. A huge amount
Ashish,
of
you're dropping out again, your audio.
Foundational research.
Rajneesh?
Yeah, cell phone disconnected. Let me just connect
Okay,
with
you're clear now. Yeah, you're very good right now. Keep talking.
Okay. Okay, so I was on the second last slide here. Can you see the screen?
Yep.
Okay, so basically, as I was saying, just to summarize my presentation, that so there are three areas which are part of our.
Hey, Rajneesh, is your cell phone still on? You might want to turn it off.
Yeah, I turned it off. I turned it off. And on the other hand, there is Agility Prime focused on accelerating technologies. So I see a symbiotic relationship between the two organizations, and we are all on board. And just to use the slogan of New Army's Future Command, let's forge the future. And I want to add with this the last slide, which is, if I can bring it to this one. That's really my question answer slide, so not much information here. But this is interesting in the sense that I want to leave you with this picture where Dr. Roper, he visited ARL about 3 years ago, and maybe this visit played a role in seeding the thought of Agility Prime. So that's all.
Great, Rajneesh, thank you. Rajneesh, I think we have a couple of minutes. I do want to ask you a question, please. You mentioned CRADAs and the CRADA opportunities that the ARL offers are probably of interest to many in the audience. And you also provided a very informative chart on the intersection of resources and relevance and expertise, as well as an example of a CRADA that you've executed. But if I wanted to come to you with an idea, how would I initiate a conversation? What types of resources are you able to offer? I know you covered some of them. But what would I give up in return? How do I make it work?
Right. I think giving one general answer is probably difficult. So a lot of it is case-to-case basis, depending on what partner we need and what we can offer. So I assume the best approach is to really reach out to the link I had on that last slide, or even just somehow get in touch with your potential partner at ARL, and then start discussing those finer details. And that's how it really happened with Uber. So I got to meet him at this VFS forum, and we were listening to this presentation. Mark and I started talking about this thing. Then I told him how we have some expertise in this area, and they came to visit us. We discussed, and we had CRADA in a few months. So it's really case by case basis, but the best approach is really to reach out and then start discussions. And in terms of what you have to give up, I think one of the first question or concern that any potential partner has is he going to give up his IP right? And that is something that is absolutely, it does not impact your rights to IP or your potential to commercialize your idea. So that is not a concern at all. But again, there is some legal So, and those, and ARL's Technology Transfer Office really go out of the way to answer these kind of questions in legalese, I guess.
Okay, great. Can I jump back to, we have a few minutes, can I jump back to David, please, for a second? I do want to ask you to discuss one additional aspect of your work approach. Can you briefly discuss the MURI process and then also provide some juxtaposition to the VLRCO, how it might encompass topics of unique research related to eVTOL that might not be addressed under the umbrella of traditional areas? David?
Sure thing. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Excellent. Yes, so for all of you online, if you may not be familiar with it, the MURI's Multi-Disciplinary University Research Initiative. And basically they focus, kind of like VLRCO does, it focuses on very basic research. So 6.1, enabling science for future capabilities. And usually the services go through a process of developing potential topics for future MURI endeavors that would really bring about profound change in how we approach the development of technology. So at least juxtaposed to the VLRCO, as I understand it, and Mahindra and others can probably steer me in the better direction, but it has a very specific focus, and the technologies within that particular capability, which is vertical lift. As an example, within the eVTOL perspective, at least, what the MURI somewhat enables is that you can start bringing in many other disciplines that, so say for example, aeromechanics, flight controls, propulsion, all those are very key tenets of vertical lift. But now if you're potentially thinking about eVTOL unmanned platforms, then you can start opening up the trade space of actually bringing in areas such as automation, for example, bringing in disciplines that you don't necessarily associate with vertical lift necessarily, but that could, as a whole package, be able to provide you that potential jump in capability. And so if successful, they are highly competitive. So every service, every organization such as ONR, ARO, and the FWSR submit topics for consideration at the OSD level, and they're racked and stacked accordingly and competed. So if the capability and the topic are compelling enough and actually produce a topic that is selected and announced to the community, then that opens up the avenue of different universities being able to partner and build a huge team to collaborate to tackle the problems that are advertised within the ONR, I mean the MURI topic specifically. So does that answer your question, Ashish?
Yeah, I think so. I think that was great, David. We're kind of getting pretty close to the end of our session here. Just very quickly, Sterling, was there anything particular that popped up that we'd like to bounce to the speakers?
Yeah, for sure. Most of the questions were really just directed at getting the speakers' contact info for reaching out. I don't know if the speakers want to just share that online or type in chat their emails, but that would be very helpful for the people trying to get into contact.
Okay, so people are looking for your contact info. I guess we need to find a way for them to connect. Well, with that, I thank everyone for their attention. Nathan, I'd hand back to you if you'd like to say a few words to close.
Sure, thanks so much for our fantastic group of panelists today. It's exciting to see, as we've advertised in other forums while directly with Agility Prime, we are not having the opportunity that we want to immediately to fund direct research and development. But clearly you can see a significant amount of interest across these labs. And most importantly, I think you see the opportunity here that we have for collaboration. We welcome other ideas for that collaboration as we start to take these different technologies, find ways that they actually can be attached to existing products or potentially improve future products And in that way, looking forward to opportunities working with the Army, Navy. You've seen the Marine Corps on here before, and find those opportunities really to bridge that valley of death, to fly forward into this next era of aerospace. And so thanks for joining us this afternoon. Next week, we'll be focusing our attention on the operators and some of the different use cases that are out there. So we look forward to having you back, and potentially on the week of the 24th, special guest speaker as well. So thanks for your attention. Look forward to your feedback, and we'll see you next week. Goodbye.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you.